Play community. I'm Kristen Kalina. This is Martianne Stanger. I'm super excited to reconnect with Martianne. Kristen Kalina from Mastermind Adventures. I always forget that part.
Yeah.
I always forget to plug myself.
That's okay. You should plug yourself.
Martianne Stanger and I have been friends for many, many years. We connected through the homeschool community and have been together on a number of different adventures with DIY Club and other things that we, other homeschool field trips and things that we did together.
Fond memories of the field trips.
Many, many memories. And I'm a huge fangirl of Martianne. I think that she is amazing. She has a blog, which is
Training Happy Hearts.
TrainingHappyHearts.com.
Yeah, or blogspot.com.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll put the link in the comments.
Okay.
Martianne is a trained and certified teacher who then chose to homeschool her own children. She, we're not going to get into her whole backstory, but she's fascinating, and if you have a chance to go on her blog and read about her, you absolutely should do that. And then back when what I knew that you were doing was art and nature hikes, and that's why I had reached out, but she's since been doing some other things. And she's very, very creative, and she is just really resourceful. And I thought that having a conversation with her would be great for you guys who are also looking for unplugged ways for your kids to connect with other kids and to find activities to do that are offline and does not involve any kind of screen or video of any kind.
No screens or videos, much to my son's chagrin.
So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And so I kind of gave a little bit about your background, but why don't you kind of tell the community a little bit more about you?
All right. In a nutshell, as she said, my name is Martianne Stanger. I am currently a homeschooler, and prior to homeschooling and getting married, which came very quickly all at the same time, I spent many years traveling. I was a teacher. I worked on a cruise ship. I lived and taught in Japan for 5 years, and then I worked a bunch of other jobs, always with kids, always with community, or teaching, one or the other. Recreation and teaching were kind of what I did for life. It's what I'll always do. It's my passion. I couldn't wait to grow up and have kids and get married, and I did not know I was going to be a homeschooler, but that happened, and I wouldn't change that. And so, as you said, getting kids off screens, I am not opposed to screens. I just think they need to be limited. And so I do have one child who is kind of addicted and would spend his whole life on a screen if possible. So I spend a lot of my energy finding ways to connect with friendships we've already established, as well as making new friends that is off screen. Things we can do outside. And you had said art and nature was what you initially had wanted to talk about.
Right, yeah. So talk about art and nature hikes.
Yeah, so art and nature, I'm trying to think how many years ago it was I started it. It was only supposed to be a 6-week thing. And what happened at the time was I had one child who was getting into art. I myself like art, but was never very good at it, didn't know much about it. And I had another child and myself who liked to be out in nature. And I had a lot of parents telling me, they wish they could go out into nature, go for nature hikes, but either they were afraid or they didn't know where to go, or they wanted to do art study outside, they wanted to do nature study but didn't know how to do it. So I kind of let all those things gel in my brain, and I said, okay, I can do this. I'll just go out and do an art and nature class. But I couldn't really make it a class where we were doing nature study per se and drawing things we saw outside because, as I said, I have no skill in that area. So instead, I thought, all right, well, let's go back to having no skill. The elements of design, things like what is a dot, what is a line, what is shape, what is form. So I decided that I would do a 6-week series where we focus on one of those things each week. And so, something as simple as a dot.
Right.
So for each meetup, basically, I used Facebook, and I invited whoever wanted to come could come. And I picked a free place with parking, because that's always important, to have the freedom.
It is.
And the free parking and a location, and just told people what to bring. I brought some supplies myself, but I said, if you happen to have these supplies. So with the dot, we went out and we basically talked about what a dot is and what, you can have small dots, large dots, why it's important in art. I brought a few pictures printed out from the internet of dots in art. And then I said, well, let's try to look around. What kind of dots do we see in nature? So we went on a little scavenger hunt per se to find dots in nature. And then I challenged each person to sit in a spot and create art that they were inspired by, either with what was in front of them or something in their mind from our conversation. We created the art, and then of course, by then the kids had talked to each other, the adults had talked to each other, and it devolved or evolved, I'm not sure which you want to use, into a hut building experience. The kids got sticks, they started building forts, and they loved it. So that was week 1. And we continued on with the series like that each week, and it was a come when you can. So if we had some people who came each week, and some people who came once, some people who came every other week, just depending on what their schedules were. And they did ask me to continue it. At the time, I couldn't continue weekly, so for a while I did it monthly, and then life changes, needs change. So I kind of put the group on hold, but people still wanted the Facebook group. So the Facebook group does still exist, and basically now I either post events, community events that I see about art or about hiking, so that like-minded people, whether I'm with them or not, can get together and do those things.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and it was fun. And looking back, I have not put pictures of every meetup on my blog, but when I look back at the ones that are there and I think about it, it should have been called Art and Nature and Hut Building, because that's what the kids really liked. It didn't matter which trail we were on, they'd find the fallen logs and the fallen trees, and they'd get together. And honestly, that was one of the things I loved the most, was seeing, you know, a 2-year-old and a 12-year-old carrying a heavy log together and putting it together, and seeing the kids figure out how they could build it at that location. So it was just getting them out into the nature, I guess, is the biggest hurdle sometimes. A lot of times parents are reluctant to do something unless there's some sort of learning or skill involved. Sometimes kids are reluctant to meet other kids, or to just, you know, you go on a nature hike with your kids and they're like, Mom, how long is it? How long is it? You get a couple kids in there and the day flies. So the Art and Nature was kind of an amalgamation to help parents feel comfortable blocking off time to go do something, because their kids would be getting some sort of learning or skill. Kids feel comfortable even though they didn't know anything, because there was that art first that gave them some sort of common ground that they could then talk about. And then having the adults and kids just feel free after having done that to relax, to enjoy. I mean, we didn't always build huts. Sometimes we played in rivers or creeks, and one time there were some leeches involved. I didn't know. Didn't know there could be leeches in this area. And we got out.
Funny.
But hey, that was a part of the learning, right? And we pulled them right off. We worked as a team. So it was all okay.
So funny.
It was terrible.
Yeah, I've had experiences with leeches too. And like ponds and streams and things like that.
You're just like, oops.
You're like, well, nature.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really love about you is that, and I can share this mindset as well. It's like, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yes.
And I think that for a lot of parents, the fear of this isn't going to be perfect will stop them from taking that step and being like, hey, let's just go do this thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely do. And there's actually, I don't know the real quote for it, but years ago somebody quoted me something, and it was in a religious context, but it was about how none of us as humans can be perfect, but what we seek is approximations towards perfection.
Oh, I love that.
And that saying stuck with me, approximations towards perfection.
Right.
So I also use a saying in my own head. I always call it the ideal and the real. I have my vision of what I want to happen. You know, frolicking in the woods, everyone's so happy, no fights, no mosquitoes, no ticks,
no leeches.
No leeches. And then you have the real.
Right.
And it's what happens and what unfolds. And somewhere in the nexus between the ideal and the real is real life.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. And somewhere in the nexus between that ideal vision of perfection you have and the approximations towards it is where you go. So as a parent, I'm often challenged to do things I'm not prepared to do. I'll hold one of these lovely weapons up.
Yeah.
Okay, duct tape weapons.
Yeah.
I never knew how to make weapons.
It wasn't on your top things to learn.
Yeah,
as a woman in America.
Fighting, battling. I actually, when my kids were babies, we were going to be a no weapons house, no guns.
Pacifist.
You know, not total pacifist, but just peace.
Yeah,
you know? My boys like history.
Yes.
They love history, and they particularly loved the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
I wanted my son Luke to get offline because silly me found a video game once on the Middle Ages as something for him to do when I was doing something else. I needed to do something else. So I'm like, oh, look at this cool free thing I found online. Wouldn't you like this? Done.
Obsessed.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Always wanted to be on it. So I'm like, okay, I got to pull him offline.
Yeah.
So one Christmas he happened to get a book called, I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It wasn't called Duct Tape Warfare.
Okay,
Warfare by Duct Tape. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right
That's
now.
okay.
I can probably get it to you later.
Yeah.
But so he got that book and some PVC pipe and some foam and some duct tape. And at first, he's opening his Christmas gifts and he sees that, kind of tosses it aside because it's not so exciting on Christmas morning, right?
That's
this
hysterical.
really slim paperback book, a little bit of duct tape. So what? Let me see the other gifts.
Yeah.
Well, then the next day, he's a little bit bored, so he starts paging through it. He's like, Mom, this is so cool. Would you help me make something?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mom hadn't really looked through the book, and all right, now we have to go to Lowe's because now we need a special tool to cut the PVC pipe.
PVC,
and then my son says, Mom, okay, now let me back up and say, at the time, my son had some social skill issues, and he also was someone I was always following around because I was worried about what might happen with him in a crowd because of his social skills issues. He hadn't really shown a whole lot of leadership skills, and he says to me, Mom, I want to start a duct tape battle club. And I thought, approximations towards perfection. So I said, sure, son, we can try that. We'll put word out to some of your friends, and I'm not sure any of them will want to do it or will be able to do it, but we'll see where it goes.
They're going to want to do it for sure,
So I said, actually, I wasn't sure they were going to want to do it because I thought, Luke isn't the best leader, and this was something he was going to lead, not me. So I'm like, okay, so he's going to lead it, and it's going to be a weapons club, and there's not always a lot of self-control happening there, and they're going to be beating each other up. So I was a little nervous about it, But I said, okay, well, let's go for it.
Give it a go.
And so basically all we did is we talked to one or two other friends and said, would you be interested? And that's with a lot of the things I do. I'll make sure there's one other person interested. Then together we decided a day that works for that person and me. And that's another step. No matter what I do, I try to find one other person and a day and time that works.
That's a really good tip because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know that that's a thing that a lot of the parents who've joined our group has said is like, well, my child, there's not another person who, who's in close proximity. So reaching out, they don't necessarily have to be close proximity.
No,
you just
as
have
long
to find
as they have the free day, the mutual space, and
the interest.
Yeah. And so for this particular initiative, we didn't want it to be outside because we were starting in the winter. So my house is kind of small and not very good for groups. So I asked around and said to see a friend who was interested that had a bigger house that could do it.
Oh, smart.
And so in any case, then I had my son, because he was the one who was starting it, write an invitation. And I just sent it out to people. And I edited with him, and we said what it was. And now, of course, making these things costs money, but we didn't want to charge people, so we just charged them at cost. So what I would do, my part in it was with my son, we would decide which weapon we're making, how much it would cost, and then we'd go to, we'd put out the invitation, find out how many people are going, and let them know up front what that weapon would cost, then go to Lowe's, get the material. And then at club, we actually, my son wanted this one to be just a boys club, which I was okay with, because some things, can be for boys and girls, and then there are times when boys want to be with boys and girls with girls. So my daughter started a corollary club happening at the same time in the same location.
That's great.
But so and if the girls wanted to make the duct tape weapons, they would do it too. And then as long as all the parents were okay with them using it together after the official club time, they'd all play together with their weapons. But during the official club time, they'd do it separate. So so approximations towards perfection. We made the weapons and we followed, we made guidelines so no one would really get hurt. And occasionally we'd have to stop and demonstrate how to appropriately use them so you can have a lot of fun, get a lot of energy out, but not kill each other. We did it for several years. I think it was 3 years before we took a break. And in those 3 years, we only had one semi-serious injury. It wasn't really huge. And all it basically was, it was 2 years, I guess. My son is actually behind me right now. He just wandered outside and he's going. So it was 2 years that we did it solid, and then we took a break from it. But when you make these duct tape weapons, inside you can feel the PVC pipe, and then at the top has to be
Couple
just
of
the
inches,
foam,
right.
and someone had not left enough foam,
Ooh, yeah.
and then they had found a new tape that looked really cool and like duct tape,
But
so
it
we said it
wasn't?
was okay
Yeah.
to use, but we realized once it was on there, it actually was a lot harder.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, let me tell you, this particular sword has been used for years now, not
Yep.
just at Duct Tape Battle Club, but
Yep.
in our family, in
Yep.
daily play,
Yep.
and it's still solid,
Yeah.
you can see. So much
Yeah.
better than any foam sword you could buy.
Yep.
But I'll just hold a few of them up. You know,
Oh,
we've
that's
got
awesome.
battle axes, we've got maces, there's all kind, we've got spears.
Yeah.
And I never in my life, if you had asked me, even when I had my sons, if you
Yeah.
said, oh, will you one day be making duct tape weapons and having your kids beat each
Yeah.
other almost to death with
Right,
them?
yes.
I would have said no.
Yeah.
But it was great,
Yeah.
and the most heartwarming thing happened to me this summer is I was on Facebook and I saw friends down the Cape
Yep.
had just had a duct tape battle club.
Right, yeah.
They've seen what we've done. A couple of them had actually come off Cape and been to our thing a few times, and they decided to start their own down there.
I love that.
And it's not hard to do. You know,
Yep.
you get there is a book that goes with it, but you could probably YouTube some of it.
Right. We
Figure out
actually
how
have a
to-
class. So Seth, you
Oh,
remember
okay.
Seth, my 19-year-old, actually runs a class. If you're in the local area, on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock, we have a meetup, and we call it the Guild, the
Okay.
Heroes Guild. But this
they're
is what they
making
do.
the duct tape
They
weapons
make
now.
duct tape
Oh, okay.
weapons. But you know, I'm thinking maybe we need to add a battle aspect to it because they're just crafting.
I will tell you something that was hysterical for my Luke was when he first was doing this. He was like, Mom, do you think someday there'll be groups doing this in different areas? And they'll learn to play
Yes.
the same games?
Yeah.
And then one day we could have a meetup where
Yes.
all the different groups battle each other and we have a
Yes.
tournament.
Yeah.
And that was his dream, and it
Yeah.
hasn't come true yet. So maybe we
yeah,
can make
yeah.
that come true.
Well, our Camp Halfwood is something kind of similar
Yeah.
to that. But yes, absolutely, yeah.
But he was like picturing this,
Yeah.
that each club would have its own
Yes.
thing with established games they
Yep,
play.
yep.
And then they'd all come together.
I'll have to
So-
tell you all about Troll Ball because I think that your
I've
son
heard
would be.
about
Oh
that,
my
yeah.
gosh,
I
it's
bet
a
he'd
ball.
like it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
So yeah,
Next time you do a
approximations.
meetup with your group.
Yeah, well, we haven't. Like I said, we took a year hiatus because we were concentrated on some other things.
Right.
But we've actually had requests from people to start it
Yes.
up again, and my
Yeah.
son wants to start it up again.
Yeah.
So we'll probably be starting it again.
Awesome.
And that's another tip I have for these things, like getting offline and getting outside,
Yep.
whether it's at a friend's house or out in nature. Having some set amount, like we're going to try it for 3 weeks. We're going to try it just
Yep.
once. We're going to try it once a month.
Right.
And we're not going to be afraid to put the pause button on it.
Right.
And even if we put the pause button on it, we're not going to be afraid to start it again.
Right.
We all know that people grow and change.
Yep.
We also know life changes, emergencies happen,
Mm-hmm.
jobs change, schedules change, and nothing has to be forever.
Right.
You know,
Right.
And it can be for now. And another saying, I have a lot of sayings that I use in my head. Another saying I use with myself and with my kids when we're approaching something new is this right? And is this right now? Because there can be an idea that's right for us and not right now.
Yeah.
That might be better in the spring.
Right.
Or it might be better next year when we're studying a certain
Yeah.
topic. Or it might be better another time just because life is too full right now.
Right.
So is this right now is something
Oh, I really
I
like
talk
that.
about a lot.
I love that. So, it's not on my
Yeah.
notes, but you showed me kind of some of your fort building
Oh, yes.
endeavors and stuff with the kids. And so Martianne has some land behind her where the kids can play and kind of build in nature, and I'll let her talk to you a little bit about that. But again, kind of using the space that you have, use what you
Right.
have around you to
Right.
keep the kids occupied.
So I don't have a big yard. My yard is quite small, but we do have wetlands behind us. And for years we thought we weren't allowed to touch them at all because of laws. But we talked to the conservation agent in town, and we know there's certain areas of them we can use. And so I'm a big believer in what I call loose parts. I think these days things are often structured and everything has to be safe. So if you go to something you're paying for, everything there has to be safe enough
Right.
that there's no injuries, no lawsuits, no
Insurance.
No nothing. Yeah.
I deal with it
Insurance.
all the time.
So,
It's,
yeah.
I want to do that, but I can't
But you
because our
can't.
insurance
And
policy
so-
doesn't cover it. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you can see, like with something like Duct Tape Club or Art in Nature,
Yeah.
a lot of times when I start an initiative, whether it's a volunteer initiative, an initiative with friends, an initiative just to build community, or something paid, I have something structured, because the structure invites the parents in and invites the children in, like
Right.
I talked about before,
Right.
and then the freedom happens after the structure. And people feel connected and they're free.
Yeah.
That's just the chickens are attacking each other over there, which is a whole nother story. But So what I like to do to balance the structure is at home I like there to be a lot of free exploration, and that's where the loose parts come in. So we all have toys that have a purpose, or even open-ended toys like the duct tape weapons. They kind of have a purpose. They're an open-ended thing. You can play your own battles with them, but there's kind of a purpose for it, you know? So wood, nails, recyclable goods, pieces of metal, things other people would call trash. They don't have purpose, right? The purpose for most people is get them out of my yard, or recycle them, or go bring them to the scrap metal for money. My purpose with my kids is let's get creative. So whenever the kids have an idea, I go, okay, go for it. So with the backwoods, my kids were wanting a fort. I don't have the time right now or the skills to build this magnificent tree house like you might see on one of those special programs on TV.
HTV thing.
So I basically taught them how to use hand tools and saws and said, go for it. It's still out there. It's still not a fort, but they have had so much fun and learned so many skills doing it. They cleared a path. They started nailing something together. They put something up on a tree. It didn't work right. They had to figure out how to do it again.
So many great skills in that,
And then another time, my kids, when they were really little, we used to do obstacle courses in the yard that I would direct, and they were at a stage where they were wanting things like that again. And they'd seen a few clips of, I'm trying to think of the name of the show, Ninja? Okay, so
American Ninja?
They'd seen a few clips of that. So I said, well, build your own course. Didn't get very far with it, but they had a lot of fun, and this is just another little prop I pulled up from the back. Doesn't look like much, but it's just like a little balance beam, and they had scrap wood, and they wanted to have a balance beam, so they built it. They wanted to make sure their younger friends could use it, which is why it's so low. But it was not going to be challenging enough this way, they felt, if they built it with legs, because it's two. So they did the narrow side, and then when they were working on it, they realized that there were a lot of splinters and that their little friends might get hurt. So instead of solving the problem for them, I'd say, well, how can you solve that problem? And eventually, because duct tape is everywhere in our house, putting the layer of duct tape to protect the feet came up. And then they decided they weren't going to do it on the edges because these are on the ground and less likely to hurt. But just the idea of having loose parts, you don't need a lot of space. You don't need a huge yard. I tutor as well. And one of my tutoring students, we were talking about something, and the mom said, oh, but I don't even have a yard. I live in an apartment complex, and I did not know this existed around here, but she said they're not allowed to play outside in the apartment complex.
Oh, what?
Could not believe it. My jaw dropped. I'm like
really?
If
you don't have enough challenges keeping your kids occupied, they can't go outside.
Exactly. They
wow,
are not
that's
allowed.
awful.
So I know a few locations around here, and I gave some suggestions to her of places she could go and feel safe, like not way out in the woods with her kid, but just go to play, and some things you can do. And I said, you could actually have your loose parts in your apartment, create some things, and then bring them out.
Bring the buckets with you.
Yeah, bring them out. So
I love that.
You don't need a lot of space. Silly as it is, and I hope a lot of you who are watching have done this or have heard of this, but if you've ever made sponge bombs, you can just take sponges.
Oh, I have not heard of this.
You take regular sponges and you cut them into strips. And then you tie something around them very tight. So I don't know, have you ever made yarn balls?
So
it's the same
like
concept of a pom-pom or a yarn ball, but you make it with sponges.
Oh, cool.
And then it can go anywhere. You could have a yard of any size and have fun with this. So on a rainy day or a day when the kids just need something to keep their hands busy, they can make as many sponge bombs as they want. And then you go outside, you stick it in 2 buckets. If you want, you can make them colored, so you can have teams, stick them in 2 buckets, and the kids have a battle.
Oh my gosh, you're just giving me so many ideas
yes,
right
now. And if you're a parent who wants to do something, but doesn't want to put a lot of energy into it, can't do a series, can't do a whole series of meetup classes, but wants to entice friends and doesn't want to do something as elaborate as, say, a duct tape battle club, you could have a sponge war. You know, you can just tell everyone how to make them. Say all parents who are, all kids who are coming, you have to bring 5 sponge bombs. And all you bring as the parent is a big bucket of water. Meet at a field anywhere, someone's yard, some field, out in the, and have a sponge battle.
Oh my gosh.
So it doesn't take a lot.
Love that.
And kids, and that's really cool too for people who we were talking about pacifists before. That's something that's cool for pacifists too, because there's no actual weapon there. It's kind of like a water balloon fight, but the good thing about it is sometimes if you have a water balloon fight on public space, they got mad because you got
The
all
little-
the balloon pieces,
Yep.
and then it's not good for the birds.
Right.
The sponge bombs are great because
Yeah.
it's the same concept. There's not a lot of investment that goes into it, and it's easier to clean up.
Right, because you can probably get sponges at the Dollar Tree even.
You can, and you
Oh,
can
yeah.
sometimes, like Ocean State Job Lot,
Yeah.
anywhere, and sometimes you can get them with coupons, 3 or
Right.
4 in a pack. I will say though, get regular sponges and not the ones that have the antibacterial stuff in them.
Oh, yeah.
I just find that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
then you're not all
Nothing
the
in the- right.
not all the antibacterial ones are bad per se. You
Right.
use them on things, but some of those ones, if they're the cheap version, sometimes have like a chemical or scent in them that could hurt eyes if you get thrown in the eyes.
Good
So just the plain sponge
Yeah.
is good.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so you don't need a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of investment to
Right.
get outside and have fun.
And you can even do that with a couple of kids.
Yeah,
Like,
you can
don't
do
even
it.
need
You
a
can
big
do it
group.
with your family. You can do it with neighbors. You could do it at a family get together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the kids like it. It's fun, and
Oh,
it doesn't matter if they're 2 or they're 20.
Right,
It's fun.
right.
So.
Yeah, and you said something else that I thought was really, really important that that I've had to learn, and I don't know if you've kind of learned it yourself through your training or through being a homeschool mom, but like not solving the problem all the time for the kids
That's huge.
is huge.
Huge.
It's really hard. It's getting easier for me to stand back and just go, that's a problem. What are we going to do about it? But
It's really huge, and not solving the problem or knowing when to give the leading question.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a problem with with this,
Right.
where it's like, oh, how can we fix that, or if it's a problem with a fight.
Right.
Of course, safety comes first,
Yes,
always.
right.
And if you have to step in right away to solve a problem
Sure,
because safety is involved, whether it's safety of emotions or safety of things, that's important.
Yep.
But I do find, just being able to say, and to ask guiding questions
Yes.
without, you can have the answer in your head,
Right.
but you can't give that answer.
Right.
The kids, when they take ownership, it's so important. It's a life skill.
Right.
There's actually, I think you've probably heard of Destination Imagination.
Yes. Oh, I love DI. Yep.
So DI,
DI.
we've participated in it 2 years. We want to participate in next year, but
Yeah.
we're trying to see if we can fit
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pieces in. There's also, I'm trying to think, it's Lego, First Lego League.
Yes.
Is similar. And in those 2 things, the grown-ups are not allowed to do anything.
Right.
You are basically there just to keep them safe and to give them a
Right.
meeting space
Right.
and to be a manager, but you may not touch anything or do anything that's going to go to competition.
Mm-hmm.
I mention those not necessarily so you get involved with them if you're watching this, but because their websites are great. And you can Google Destination Imagination Instant Challenges or First Lego League and look at some of the games and the activities that they suggest for clubs
Yeah.
and do those things with your kids, and it will help you as a grown-up learn to step back. I'm a problem solver.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to go. And when I see them doing something and taking sometimes
Forever.
with my own kids, like 2 hours to do something that could be solved in 10 minutes, I want to say it, but I've learned to step back and let them solve the problem.
Yeah.
And even with friends, as I said, one of mine has had some social skills issues, and has the isms, different isms. And so it's been a hard road to navigate as to when to step in and when not.
Oh, yeah.
And I find there are times you do have to step in, but there are other times with my own children, I have cue words for them and cue signals. So when I see something maybe getting heated or that's going to cause a blowout, I'll use those. And my children, I've trained them, so to speak, to kind of step away at that moment and not to ask why. And then later we debrief it and on our own, and we'll role play it, and so that the next time they're in that situation, they can handle it better themselves.
Yeah.
And I
love
do
that.
think,
Yeah.
I think that's important. And a lot of times when you are doing activities offline, whether it's with a group of friends or with the community at large, random invite, you'll find a lot of different personalities.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So it's important to have some game rules when you set out about what is going to be acceptable and what isn't, and what's going to happen when unacceptable behavior happens.
So what does that look like, the cue? So you just have certain words that you use, and your kids know, drop this,
Yeah.
take a
And
break,
sometimes it's just
kind of
a
thing?
touch.
Yeah.
It started actually not even with those kinds of things. It started with interrupting. My kids are famous for interrupting.
Oh, mine were too,
So I maybe your listeners have seen this.
I bet
this
some of them
trick,
have.
But just the touching, have you ever done? I don't know if you know the
No.
skill. So if I'm talking with you and my kids want to get my attention, they used to just plain interrupt.
Sure.
And then they'd go, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, which interrupts as well. So I taught my kids to come up to me and go like this. And that means, Mom, I want to talk to you. But sometimes Mom doesn't get it. Actually, when they first started doing it, I'd brush their hand away, like, stop touching me, like, get off me, you're touching me all the time. So
I trained you to do this thing and now you're using it.
So, because I forget, I'm like, why are they going to just stop poking at me? So I taught them that if I don't do that, when they do this, then I go like this. And that means Mom knows your hand is there and you want to speak, and I'm going to give you time. Now, if I didn't do this, I gave them permission to take my hand and do this with my hand, which means, Mom, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So then what would happen is when we're at a place where I can pause, I'd say, excuse me a minute, and I'd say, okay, honey, what was it you wanted to tell Mommy? So it started with that cue.
Good. Yeah.
Now, I will say, just in case you use that, it's going to backfire in the car. Because then in the car, they go, Mom, I can't touch you. So you have to come up with another strategy.
We've got rule follower children. I understand because I have two of these also.
Once you train it, they're like, Mom.
Quick funny story, something similar. When my kids were little, I trained them to, because they were runners and walkawayers and wanderers and distractors.
Yeah.
So I trained them to hold on to the carriage in the grocery store when we were in the grocery store. And then all of a sudden, because it feels like all of a sudden when your kids are, you know, all of a sudden they're 14, right?
Yes.
And my kids are big, right? So they were, you know, at one point we get into the grocery store and I've got these two giant 120-pound kids hanging onto the cart, right? And I'm trying to move and I'm like, what are you doing? What do you stop? And they're like,
Mom,
this is what we're supposed to do. I'm like, you don't need to do that anymore.
You're old enough not to run away.
Oh my gosh, it's so
it
funny.
Is funny
Those rule follower kids,
But that goes back to what we were saying before, seasons of life, where it's okay to know when to pause, right? So the cues I use kind of develop from there, and I don't want to say the specific cues I use with my kids, because those are between us, and part of it is...
So you just choose a word.
We choose a word or a gesture, and part of it is there so that we're not offending anyone else. So, you know, say I see a situation developing where I know it's probably going to get ugly, I could go over and do something, and then my kids within a minute will quietly disengage, and then it's all fine, and nobody has to be any the wiser. I can talk to my kids about it later. And it did take times where they didn't listen to me and things exploded, and then they said, well, Mom, how did you know? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I've lived a few more decades than you. I don't know. Or maybe I'm not, you know, sometimes when I'm in a situation, I don't see it building.
Right.
But because I'm outside the situation, I can see it building. So, but it's just, it's important to know your kids. And if you don't know the kids you're working with or the young adults you're working with, to just have some ground rules set. How do we treat each other? What do we say? It's also, I do find, this is a good side point, when I'm doing activities, whether they're paid or free, volunteer, it doesn't matter, with groups of people that the parents are there for, it's really important, I find, to let the parents know the expectation. Do I want all parents involved?
Right.
Is it okay for you to be chatting? And if so, how far away do you need to chat so you're not interrupting
a distraction,
us? Is it something where, you know, I'll just take your kids and you go have fun? Or is it something where, you know what, I'm not an expert in this, and if you're more expert than me, please feel free to interrupt me and to, you know, just to kind of let the other parents know what your expectations are, or what would be helpful for you. Because a lot of times parents really don't know what to do. So many parents are used to just, I pay for something, I drop my kids off, I go pick them up.
Right. Yes.
And so if you're doing more of these community type things, knowing what you're going to do, or if you're doing it with parents, making it engaging for the parents themselves. I recently, I teach drama for a franchise, but I also have a long drama background, and someone asked me to teach a theater class, didn't have a space for it, I didn't have a space for it. I said, it's good weather, you want to do it in the woods? She said, yes, I love that, my kid needs to get out in nature. So we invited some other people, and for that particular class, I talked to the woman who asked me to run it. I said, okay, so what ages do you want me to gear it for? How much nature do you want included? And do you want the parents included? And she said she would really like it if parents could feel free to step in and out.
Oh, nice.
So that's how I planned the class, and I did have some parents engaged with part of it, but then they mostly chose to step out. There have been other times with the franchise I teach with when we have what's called Drama Mama and Papa Day. It's Drama Kids. It's a great creative dramatics program where the parents love to be involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, just knowing and letting the other parents know what they want. And because I'm talking about things in the woods, a really great rule if you're bringing kids into the woods for whatever, whether it's a battle or just hiking, is that depending on the age, if you have a lot of littles, everyone has to be in sight of someone else. So if you're on the trail, you don't necessarily have to have the back person seeing the front person, but everybody has to be able to turn around and see the person behind them. Yeah. And the front person has to stop at every fork.
Oh, nice.
So that's a great hiking tip, just to keep safety.
Yep.
And then as they get older, it can be for calling, as long as you can be heard. Because as the kids get older, they want to lead instead of you, and they want to go around the corner. Right. But if they've gone around a corner, they have to call out, and you can just make it a call out, hey, can you hear me? Or you can be silly and make a woo 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 or whatever, like your signal call, that your war call that they learn.
Secret messages.
So those are some good safety tips for, and of course if you're bringing people into the woods and they don't know, sorry if you hear sounds in the background.
I just didn't want to trip over that.
Yeah, guys.
He's good. He's fine.
That my kids are having a battle in the back with laser tag. I just don't want them to knock.
You guys are fine. You're good.
So but just make sure if you're bringing people out in nature, even if it's in a field, know what poison ivy looks like. That's huge, because poison ivy isn't just in the woods, it's often growing at the edge of a field. Right. So that's another just silly side tip. The worst thing is you get a kid offline and out enjoying these things, and then they come down with a terrible case of poison ivy or tick bite or so just be careful with those things.
So make sure you've got your sunscreen on and all of those. I usually try to, when we're going outdoors, I try to kind of remind parents, make sure that sunscreen is applied. And
I'll
all
often
of that.
Bring extra.
Yeah,
just
me
in
too.
Case.
Like, here it is.
Yep.
So. No, that's a really good tip too. But I love the tip of making sure if you're planning for other people, set the expectation out at the beginning so that parents know how to be involved, how to be most helpful.
And for community too, not only that, but like what to do with kids that are too old or too young. So if you plan something for a certain age, you have to decide as the leader or the planner, the facilitator, if the other children can be involved, if they're older or younger, and to what degree, or what those families can do. Because I really feel when you're trying to build community, you don't want to exclude someone who has an infant or has a 2-year-old. But if it's something like this summer I'm leading, just for a few friends, I'm doing a Shakespeare Outside series. And we decided, because Shakespeare's kind of tough, that we would do it for 8 and up. But a lot of our families have younger kids. So I just told the parents, like, the younger kids can be involved if they can handle it. But for this particular thing, I don't want them in and out. They either have to be in or out.
Right.
But I've prepared enough that I can pretty much lead everything. So if those of you who have younger kids can just go a little ways away and do something fun with the younger kids, that'd be great.
Right.
So just having something, knowing your space well enough that you can tell people who have little ones or people who have older kids that might not be interested, or what's available for them to do, so they don't have to feel like, oh, I got to find something for this kid to do. So that's another good tip.
So we are, I think, 35 minutes, 38 minutes. I don't know.
I'm like,
we've
with
got
my glasses,
a few more
my
minutes.
aging glasses.
I know, it's getting worse I didn't used to need them, and now, like, I'm not even used to the feeling of them on my face.
I'm supposed to actually get bifocals now, but I just haven't gone there yet.
I know. So any recommended, like, best books to read for parents, or blogs to read, or...
I will honestly say I've looked at a lot of books as far as, like, things to do with your kids outside, things to do in nature, and I often find they're very cliche. I find most of my ideas just because it literally comes to me in the night, like I can't sleep and something comes to me. Or I've seen a picture somewhere, on Pinterest or on Facebook or through a friend. Or there's a class offered somewhere, but I can't afford it for my kids. So I'm like, well, what could I do like that? So a lot of the stuff for me is like that. But for books, as crazy as it sounds, picture books. If I have something I'm going to do, like for another initiative I led for a while was a habitats group, where we went to one outdoor space. It's actually here in Middleborough called Pratt Farm. It's a space I love. And it has water there, it has a field there, and it has woods there. And my kids were a little bit younger. We were talking about habitats. Other people wanted to learn about habitats. So we did a 4-week series where we learned about a different habitat each week.
Great.
And I used picture books. So instead of like going to find a specific picture book,
Yep.
I just went to the library and I looked for things about streams, things about woods that were engaging and could be read aloud. If you're doing nature, crinkle root books are great. There's a
Ooh,
there's a
love the name of that.
Yeah, Jim Arnowski is the author, and there's an imaginary character called Crinkle Root, and we love that. But I often would find a picture book when I'm leading something. Because even older children, surprisingly, even
they love
preteens
that.
and teens, like to be read to.
Yeah.
And a picture book is quick. So if you're using something with a group, the picture book can kind of give some information that you can then extrapolate from. For gaining ideas, really, I don't use particular books anymore. I've been at recreation since I was a kid myself, so I know a lot.
Right.
Blogs, there are blogs I follow, but you know, for outdoor ideas for little ones, there was Teacher Tom was one I used to like, and I can't even remember, I think it was called Outdoor Play. But a lot of times now, because Google Images has gotten so good and Pinterest is so good, if I have an idea in my head, I'll just look at it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't know a book to recommend until I see it. You know, like the duct tape.
Right.
It's called Warfare by Duct Tape, and they
Okay.
have a website too.
Yeah.
That was something I came upon, and then we just took off with it, and we
Right.
love it.
Right.
But otherwise, you kind of just get to know people who do cool things
Yes.
that you like to do.
Right.
And you share ideas. I remember years ago, when you were starting your Nerf battle thing,
Yeah.
I remember I sent you something on battle games.
Yes,
because
yeah.
I had found it and I knew you'd love
Right.
it. And I just find that just that kind of thing. So I don't have, I can't say any particular
No, you've
books
given
or
some.
blogs.
Yeah, no, you've given some good tips. That's great. And so, do you want to talk about, like, is there anything, if they're local, like, if they wanted to come chat with you or find you online?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Martianne Stanger, and anyone is welcome to private message me anytime. As far as if you want to come chat with me somewhere, you can do it there. I do have my blog, Training Happy Hearts. I will admit that right now, just because the way life is, I usually just make a Sunday post, which is something to do with our personal family faith.
Yep.
And then I also do usually a review post. I get products to review.
Awesome.
And so I do curriculum posts for review. In the past, I wrote a lot more about special needs, particularly sensory processing disorder, and I also often used to share small classes that I put together. So in the archives, you'll find the art in nature, you'll find the habitat stuff.
Right.
It's in the archives, but if you started looking at it now, you're going to get mostly faith and reviews, because I'm out doing all the time, I don't have as much time to write. But like I said, I am happy to put together things for free. I'm happy to help anyone. Every week I get someone saying, how do you put together a small group co-op or a series? How did you do this?
You should have a consulting business.
Well, I've done consulting for free for many years. But
I mean like that you get paid for.
Well, maybe I'll do that. But I am going to say one thing, after the Theater in the Woods, one thing I would like to put out there is I am happy to do birthday parties, get-togethers. If you don't feel comfortable leading your kids in something and you want someone to come in for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours and lead someone, I'm happy to talk to you about that, figure out what your budget is, what you're interested in, do that. And particularly in theater, I have years of experience in drama, but my favorite kind of drama is not get up and do a play. My favorite kind of drama is something called creative dramatics, which is more about using drama to teach skills, whether it's problem solving, speech, just improv, and doing drama games basically. So I did, as I said, I led that Theater in the Woods class, which was so much fun. And my husband was there and took so many pictures. It was hysterical. So the pictures, they're so dramatic and fun. But if anyone would like, in the local area, would like to do Theater in the Woods or Theater in a Field or Theater in your yard, you can absolutely get in touch with me. I also tutor large groups and small. So that's all kind of paid stuff I do, but I'm also happy to just share ideas. If I was in a financial place that I could give, and if my kids didn't need me so much for their own homeschooling, if I could give of my knowledge to everyone freely, I would. That's why I blog. You'll see affiliate links on my blog. I make maybe $5 a year from it. Most of it's just to share ideas freely, because I feel like so much has been given freely to me that I want to give freely back to the community.
That's awesome.
So,
all right.
yeah.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you.
I know that, it's hard to find time in our busy schedules to connect, but
I
I'm glad
was
this
happy
was a
you
great
asked me because
excuse.
I got to see you again.
know.
So I used to see her once a week at
Yeah.
different activities, and then she moved her activities
Yeah.
a little further away, and some needs and appointments of my children
Yep.
changed, and so we got out of the
Yeah.
habit of seeing each other, and it's been forever.
Yeah.
And I love what she does and what your group does, and I'm always sending people that way. It's hysterical, like
So
because
exciting.
I'm for some my husband sometimes teases me and calls me the homeschool evangelist because I will have people I've never met in my life call, Facebook, or
Yeah.
email me to say, oh, I want to homeschool, and someone told me you
Oh,
tell
yes.
me how.
Yes. Yeah.
And then trying to find the trail of how they learned
yeah.
my name.
Yep.
But it's funny because then what I do sometimes, depending on what their kid's into
Yeah.
or what their needs are, is I send them to her. But I don't tell her. I just say, oh, you have to look up Mastermind Adventures. So
Oh,
it's
I
really funny because
appreciate it.
I love
do.
what you guys do.
Yeah,
So.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I told her she's my soul sister. So if you are not watching this in the Let's Play group, then you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com. I think it's just /Let's Play MA. I'll put the link in the comments. You can see our website, mastermindadventures.com, if you want to contact me or join our email list. Everything is right there. And we're happy to help. I hope that you found this video helpful. I found it helpful. I'm glad that I had you.
I kind of have a motor mouth sometimes,
Oh,
and I
no,
speak
I love
quickly.
it.
So I hope that, if there were any salient points that you didn't catch because of the way I do things, I can slow down.
No, you did
I
great.
just get excited about what I
It's
talk
exciting.
about.
Yeah,
So
no, I loved it. I thought it was
just
great.
leave a comment or a message.
Yeah,
and
leave
you
us a
can alert
message.
me.
I can.
And then I admit, I'm doing too much right
Yes,
now.
yeah.
So unless I know to look for something, I don't always get back, and
I'll
it's not
tag you,
because I'm
yeah.
ignoring you.
Yeah.
So yeah, tag me and I'll respond.
So
So.
and if there's somebody that you want to talk to or somebody with a certain expertise you want me to reach out to, please let us know in the comments. We are happy to have these conversations. So thanks guys. See you next week.
Bye.